This isn't working. There we go. Let's just scoot over a bit. There we go. Alright, so in this video, we are doing an engine swap on this Mini Baja Bug Project. Now, this engine is a Polaris XLT 600, and it has proven itself to be the most unreliable engine I have ever used. This thing is a nightmare to start. It overheats, it does not run right. I've tried tuning this engine how many times. I put a bigger radiator on it, and that kind of helped with the overheating, but it still gets kind of hot. I put different carburetors on it to try and get it to run better, and it helps, but it's still an absolute nightmare to start, and it still is really bogging on the throttle. It's just not tuned properly, and I suck at tuning carburetors, so I'm just kind of done with this engine. And actually, I recently filmed a little video and uploaded it to YouTube asking you guys, what is your guys' opinion on this project? Should I paint and finish this project, leaving this XLT 600 on here and just further tune on it, further work on it, or should I do an engine swap with a Suzuki SV 650 engine? And more than 95% of the comments from you guys said to engine swap it with the SV650, which has fuel injection and electric start. And I totally agree because, yeah, this engine, while as nice as it is, two-strokes are awesome. It's a really small, lightweight, very powerful engine. For some reason, this has been just really unreliable, and it's kind of been a nightmare. And everywhere I take this vehicle, this engine has broken down, and 2 of the 3 off-roading parks I've taken this vehicle to, I have had to get towed back to camp because this engine has broken down and won't fire back up. So, yeah, we're finally doing an engine swap and getting rid of this thing. Now, I'm going to be completely honest, this engine swap is not going to be easy. We're going to have to redo kind of a lot of stuff on this frame. We're going to have to basically cut off the whole back end of this frame and build a new one to get the new engine to fit in here. We're also going to have to redo a lot of the controls, but I do think it's going to be worth it. Now, the reason that this is half taken apart already is I actually had to borrow 2 of the pistons in this engine to use on the same engine on the Mini Lift and Muscle Car project because I had to do an engine rebuild on that. 2 of the pistons were broken, so I had to borrow the pistons in this to be able to finish the rebuild on that in time for the next Mini Mayhem, which is coming up pretty soon. So, yeah, that's why this is already half taken apart. So, I think I figured out why we were burning through belts and why the acceleration really wasn't that great. Wow, that is bad. That is heavily worn out on both sides. Look at that. Jeez. So for those who don't know, this should be a perfect straight line, and it should not be this worn out right here and here. So, yeah, that is definitely not good. Now, I will admit, I'm kind of a little bit bummed that we're getting rid of the CVT. I'm starting to really like CVT drive because there's something to be said about being able to just mash the throttle down and going from 0 to breakneck speed in a couple seconds without having to worry about shifting gears or worry about a clutch. So plus having a off-road vehicle with a clutch kind of sucks. So I'm starting to really like CVT drive. But yeah, I guess for this project, we're just gonna go back to the standard motorcycle engine with a manual clutch and gears. So for the amount of time that I spent building this frame from scratch, it's never fun to have to start cutting it apart, but I mean we have to basically get rid of the whole back end of this thing to start from scratch and to be able to get the new engine to fit in here, which does mean we have to get rid of all this paneling right here that I kind of spent a lot of time on, and yeah, just basically just get rid of the whole back end and start from scratch. Now, before we work on trying to figure out how we're going to get the new engine to fit in the frame, we first need to work on the front suspension. Now, when I got back from Mini Mayhem, I was looking at the front suspension and I was like, there's something wrong. Especially with the bottom A-arms, something doesn't look right. And I was looking at it more closely. Ah, that's nice. I wonder when that broke, because that definitely broke at Mini Mayhem, because I didn't notice it until I got back. I don't think that broke when I was loading it up and unloading it from the trailer. That definitely happened at Mini Mayhem, so I'm wondering how long I was driving this with that broken. So yeah, let's work on fixing that. Come on. Luckily, I didn't break the bottom of this shock because it was kinked to the side by a lot, but it did see a little bit of damage. This is the neighbor's cat that just shows up randomly. I have no idea whose cat this is. Yeah, I don't know how this didn't snap off. It's not being held on by much. Oh wow, and this side's bent to, oh, it's cracked. This, oh wow. This side is also bent and cracked. I wonder if I hit something. Yeah, there's definitely some bad damage. Yeah, that was not held on by much, and actually I think the reason why this is broken is because, so this is thick wall tubing, and the Heim joints I'm using are designed for thin wall tubing, so what I have to do is I have to take a metal burr and expand the inside of the tubing to be a lot wider to get the heim joint bung to fit in here, but that causes a really bad weak spot. You can actually see where I had to thin it out. So yeah, that caused a really bad weak spot in a very vulnerable area. Which is why when I fix this, I'm going to add more tubing on the outside as well as gussets to try and strengthen this up. Now, I need to make it to where this bung in this heim joint fits into the tubing, and you can see the size difference. This bung is more meant for thin wall tubing, and this is thick wall tubing. Now, what I'd normally do is just put this in the lathe and machine this down to be a lot smaller, so therefore it fits in the tubing, but unfortunately, these bungs have, I guess, this feature where the inner diameter is really thin, or this portion is really thin, the inner diameter is a lot bigger, I guess for weight saving or something, which makes it to where I cannot machine this down, and instead I have to machine this inner diameter a lot bigger in order for this to fit in here, which doesn't really make sense. And these heim joints are for 1-inch tubing. This is 1-inch tubing. They're just for really thin wall. So next time I'll just not buy these types of heim joints again. But yeah, that's what creates the really bad weak spot right here, because then it turns into just really thin wall tubing right here, right where the heim joint connects to. Yeah, that is definitely gonna be a lot stronger. Alright, that's fixed. Now, before we try to mount the engine in the frame, we first need to try and get this sprocket as far over as possible, which means flipping this differential around, which I'm pretty sure we can do. I think these are symmetrical, and trying to see if we can mount the sprocket on this side of this piece of aluminum to try to get it as far over as possible to the right. Now, in case you guys haven't seen this project before, this is an open differential with cutting brakes, and without this vehicle would really suck at turning because there's not really that much weight on the front end, and especially under acceleration, so steering doesn't really work that well, so I kind of really heavily rely on this to steer and turn this vehicle, and I will admit it's not really that great because you kind of have to stand on the brake pedal in order for it to work, and I think it's because I'm using these really small, cheap brake calipers. Also, the way the brake pedal is, there's not really that much mechanical advantage to the master cylinder, so you kind of have to stand on it to get a decent amount of pressure in the master cylinder. So I not only want to redo how the brake pedals are, but I also want to replace these really tiny brake calipers with something a little bit bigger. And years ago, I found these brake calipers at the scrapyard. I think I paid like maybe 10 bucks for them. I found 4 of them. These are BMW Hayes, I believe that's how you say it, Hayes brake calipers, and they have 4 pistons with much bigger brake pads. So I'm pretty sure these are gonna have a lot more stopping power, and hopefully they'll make this work a little bit better. Now, when I take this apart, I'll also cut off the original mounts for the brake calipers and weld on new mounts for the new brake calipers. So I'm pretty sure I can just flip this thing over and mount the sprocket on this side, but I want to make sure the sprocket doesn't have any wobble to it or anything. So I want to machine this a little bit, and I think the bolt holes are going to line up perfectly, so I don't think we need to remachine those, thankfully. So yeah, let me chuck this in the lathe and just take a little bit off of here just to make sure the sprocket isn't wobbling or anything. So I'm going to use the chain hoist to lift the engine up and get it in place so we can figure out how we're tacking it into the frame. So, this was my original plan. I wanted to mount the engine backwards in the frame, so therefore we can just have one chain going from the output of the engine to the differential, and I thought that this would be simpler, we'd only have one chain, but now that I'm looking at this, I'm not really sure how well this is going to work. So, there's too many clearance issues with the chain. I'm pretty sure we're going to have some pretty gnarly chain issues, having the chain having to snake around, because obviously because we're spinning, because we're facing the engine backwards, this is the output's spinning backwards, and we have to have this spinning this way, so we can't just simply have a chain going from here around there, where this vehicle would be driving backwards then. So this is kind of a simple, easy way to reverse the direction of these sprockets, is by having the chain going around here, going to an idler, going over the front of this sprocket, going over around another idler. That makes it to where as this is spinning this way, this is spinning this way. But I don't know, there's too many clearance issues right here. The chain is definitely going to hit that. The chain gets really close to the push rod that pushes in the clutch, which is definitely not good. This right now is an 11-tooth sprocket that fits on here, and while it does make more clearance for this push rod, it still is not really enough, and the chain can easily hit that, which is definitely not good. Also, looking at this, I'm pretty sure the chain's going to get really hot if we're driving this really fast for long periods of time. It's having to snake around like this. So I'm not too sure if this is going to work, because the only upside with mounting the engine backwards was having only one chain going from here to here, but this was the only way I could do it, so I'm not too sure if this is a good idea. Now I know it looks like this engine is really sticking out past the back of the frame, but it's in the exact same position as the original engine was. This engine's just a lot longer than the XLT 600, so it just looks like it's sticking out further back. Actually, the original frame stuck out 12 inches past this tubing right here. So the original frame ended right here. So it's not like it's going to be sticking out further. It's just because it's a longer engine, it makes it look like it's sticking out further. So now I've been staring at this for a day and a half now, trying to figure out what is the best way to do, because like I said, this was my original idea, to mount the engine backwards. That makes it simpler with only one chain. But now that I'm looking at it, it's not really simpler. It's really complicated. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of clearance issues. And now I'm thinking it would just be simpler and I think better to just turn the engine around and have it facing forward. Just like that. It makes it to where the front cylinder is further in the frame. We can actually scoot it forward a little bit more if we want to, which is awesome. I think more of the center mass of the engine is further forward in the frame. The only thing is this makes it to where now we have to run a jack shaft and a second chain, which is that the end of the world? I don't think so, because even with the jack shaft and even with the second chain, I think that is simpler than whatever the heck this is. So, plus this fixes the issues of now the oil coolers facing forward is probably going to get more airflow than it would be facing backwards. Now the throttle bodies are a little bit further forward. And now the coolant intake pipe is now facing forward instead of backwards. And actually, even it sitting right here, which we can move it, further forward if we want to. Even right there, it's you know, it is further in the, so it's more compact, which is definitely better. So yeah, I think it's just, you know, even though we do have to run a jack shaft and a second chain, I think this is going to be a lot simpler and a lot more compact. Also, I do know that these SV650 engines do have oil starvation issues with wheeling. So how would that work? And would that create more issues with the oil starvation issues if we mounted this engine backwards, and if we are doing, because this thing's definitely going to do wheelies. Now with this much heavier engine, sticking pretty far out of the back of the frame, how would that work with the engine facing, but the engine would be tilting in the opposite direction. So would that create more starvation issues with the oil or less? I'm not really sure about that. So I don't know. So as cool as it would be mounting the engine backwards, I think it's just going to be a lot simpler and a lot better having it facing forward. It's going to be a lot more compact. It's going to shorten the back of the frame by like 4 inches if we mount it facing forward. So yeah, I think let's just mount it facing forward. It's going to be a lot simpler. So, now that we are abandoning the idea of mounting the engine backwards, we need to put this back where it was, which means we need to get rid of this idler pulley, which is just tacked in place. This one's just sitting here. We need to flip the diff back around and then mount the sprocket back on its original spot. Well, now it's useless that I machined this other side, but you know what? Whatever. Alright, let's do a comparison of the original engine placement and the new engine placement. Because I know it looks like this engine's really sticking out pretty far out of the back of the frame, but if we take the original frame and put it back where it originally was, yeah, right about there, it actually, even though this engine is a lot bigger, it's actually pretty much in the same spot as the original engine, which is awesome and surprising. I know this engine weighs probably 30 pounds more, but I am glad that I decided not to do my original idea of mounting the engine backwards. I think that just would have been too confusing, because it fixes one issue, but it makes like 4 or 5 other issues. So having it facing forward, I think it's just going to be simpler. It fits better in the frame. So yeah, I'm excited about this because I loved this vehicle. It was incredibly fun to drive. It was just infuriating how unreliable the engine was. So hopefully with this new engine, hopefully this will be a lot more reliable.